Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar for today, where we will discuss green buildings in terms of energy and water efficiency. My name is Fatma Al-Bastaki from the Dubai Chamber Center for Responsible Business, and today we are here to discuss this important topic with a number of expert speakers who we have lined up in today's webinar. So as we all know that green buildings is a very important domain for the UAE. And the UAE has laid great emphasis on this particular domain. And as per a survey that was done in 2021, the UAE was the first regionally and the 14th globally in terms of the number of sustainable green buildings that are currently existing in the country. This was the case with 869 green buildings that are currently in the country as of 2021. And of course, this number is continuously increasing due to the mandates, due to the regulations, due to the standards that are being introduced continuously to make sure that the built environment is always sustainable and green. Of course, this comes in alignment with the UAE's commitment to the Paris Agreement for Climate Change, where the UAE has committed to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 23.5% by the year 2030. And we can also see that nowadays individuals are also getting more aware and getting more involved and committed in those kind of fields, because as we saw in Earth Hour 2022, which was just in the last weekend, in Dubai alone, DEWA has recorded the greatest participation since 2008. And 329 megawatts of electricity were saved, and that corresponds to 132 tons of CO2. So this shows that how much the built environment is important in order to make sure that our entire environment is saved, and we always try to reduce our emissions coming from the built environment. Today, we have a number of expert speakers who will be discussing this topic in detail, and they will also be sharing their own examples when it comes to their own green buildings. We will have a short Q&A session by the end of today's webinar. So if you have any question for any of our speakers, please just drop it there and we will try to address as much as we can by the end of the session. Let me introduce our first speaker for today. We have with us Jennifer Ifanye Okoro, Program Officer, Technical Advisory Services at International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA. Jennifer, over to you, and I'll stop sharing my screen here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me share mine. Let me know if you can. Now I'm having issues sharing my screen.
I could share it on your behalf if that's.
Yeah, please do, because it's for some reason it keeps bringing up advanced sharing options. I'm not sure why.
No
okay,
worries.
Perfect.
Just let me know when I need to.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Fatima, for that introduction. I think I'd first off like to apologize on behalf of my director, Ahmed Badir, who could not be with you today. He was supposed to be giving this speech. As you all know, MENA Climate Week is currently in progress, and so he had a number of equally pressing engagements. So apologies on his behalf. My name is Jennifer Ifanye Okoro, as Fatima mentioned, and I work for IRENA's, the International Renewable Energy Agency. And within IRENA, we have a new division called the Project Facilitation and Support Division. So I'll also be, in addition to talking about what we do, also be featuring some of our initiatives. Next slide, please, Fatima. So this is just to present a roadmap of today's discussion. I'll actually be highlighting IRENA's fabulous headquarters, our building in Masdar City, and then presenting, the current state of play with regards to renewable energy and the available opportunities. I'll also be briefly discussing some of the challenges that we see with regards to renewable energy investments, as well as going into our project facilitation work that we do. And I'll also be discussing and mentioning two of our initiatives, one of which is the Climate Investment Platform. I'll talk about who can access it, how to access it, the eligibility criteria, give a brief example of some of the projects that we've supported, and then also talking about our last initiative, which is the Energy Transition Accelerator financing platform. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is our fabulous headquarters, our building in Masdar City. This was actually a new building that we moved into in March of 2015. The 32,000 square foot complex consists of 3 interconnected buildings, which all work together to conserve energy and water and to create, a wonderful shared space for its staff, as well as all of its inhabitants. The complex actually received 4 pearls, which is the highest rating from Estidama. It's a UAE certification system that measures energy, water, and carbon efficiency. And I'm very proud to say that Irenas headquarters is one of the most advanced buildings in the country, but also one of the most sustainable buildings of any international organization worldwide. Next slide, please, Fatima. Thank you. So this is just to present some of the key features of the building. You can see it has, solar, it's mounted with solar PV rooftop, a solar PV rooftop system, which produces 305,000 kilowatt hours of electricity annually. It has a solar water system, a solar hot water system that produces heat equivalent to 27,850 kilowatts of electricity annually. But then it also has solar water heaters that supply 70% of the building's hot water demand. It has an air conditioning system that recovers 75% of the energy released through air exhaust. It also has up to 95% of energy generated from lowering elevators, which is harnessed and reused throughout the building. It uses roughly 50% less water than typical buildings in the area, and also uses 42% less energy than global energy efficiency standards, and 64% less energy than typical buildings in Abu Dhabi. Next slide, please. So this is just to kind of discuss, give a picture of the current status of renewable energy globally and where we stand. Despite suffering, during the onset of the pandemic, the renewable energy saw a record increase of new power capacity in 2020 globally, and was the only source of electricity generation to experience a net increase. In the first quarter of 2020, global use of renewable energy in all sectors increased by about 1.5% relative to the previous first quarter of 2019. And the global use of renewable energy in the first quarter of 2020 was 1.5% higher than the previous first quarter of 2019. And this increase was actually driven by a rise of about 3% in renewable electricity generation, after more than 100 gigawatts of solar PV and about 60 gigawatts of wind power projects were completed in 2019. Renewable energy reached its highest recorded share in the global electricity mix in 2020, an estimated 29%, due in large part to low operating cost and preferential access to electricity networks during periods of low demand. The International Energy Agency's Renewable Energy Market Update actually identifies several countries as driving the phenomenal growth in renewable energy last year, 3 of which include notably China, the US, and Vietnam. All 3 countries were facing policy deadlines that spurred renewable energy projects to completion. And at the same time, obstacles that have slowed progress in the renewable sector in past years unfortunately persisted during 2020. For the first time ever, the number of countries with renewable energy support policies did not increase from the previous year. And while renewable energy targets are in place in nearly all countries, many countries were not on track to achieve their 2020 targets in multiple sectors, and many had not yet set new targets as their 2020 targets came to term. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next slide. I probably talked through some of those bullets, and click again. Yes, perfect. Thank you. So renewable energy, so just to talk about the current status of renewable energy in the UAE, renewable energy has become, economically attractive in even oil-rich, countries in the UAE, and ramping up renewables to 10% of the country's total energy mix and 25% of total power generation could generate annual savings of 1.9 billion by 2030 through the avoidance of fossil fuel consumption and lower cost. With health and environmental benefits factored in, the transition to renewables could generate additional net annual savings of 1 billion to as much as 3.7 billion by 2030. So UAE has actually outlined its energy strategy for 2050. And it includes, increasing the contribution of clean energy to 25 to 50% by 2030, reducing carbon emissions resulting from the power generating process by 70%, as well as improving energy efficiency by 40%. The UAE's total renewable energy capacity reached 2.3 gigawatt at the end of 2020, and solar is the critical resource and focus for the UAE. Different forms of solar energy would account for more than 90% of renewable energy use, according to the RE map 2030. But also solar PV additions are definitely going to pile up, especially from this year, 2022, and really drive the country's total renewable capacity to an impressive 9 gigawatts by the end of 2025. The UAE is also home to one of the lowest tariffs in the world, with solar prices declining by more than 70% in the past 4 years. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the current status, just to give a sort of an outlay of the current status of renewable energy investments, global renewable energy investments have increased almost steadily since 2013, peaking at $351 billion in 2017. In 2019, the amount of renewable power capacity added, excluding large hydro, was the highest ever in history at 184 gigawatts. But the quest to achieve and accelerate the energy transition will require continued mobilization and effective deployment of significant investments in the sector. Per Irenas post-COVID recovery analysis, the share of renewables in total fine energy would have to grow at a rate of 1.2% per year, which is a 5-fold increase from the 0.25% rate that can be achieved under the policies currently in place or under consideration. This would yield a 28 to 29% global renewable energy share by 2030. The energy transforming scenario suggests the cumulative energy sector investments in renewable energy and energy efficiency must rise to $49 trillion between now and 2030. This means the annual investment must reach around 4.5 trillion over the period to 2030. And channeling these investments, however, to the renewable energy sector, especially in developing countries, requires a steady pipeline of investor-ready and scalable projects. And the challenges in achieving this are manifold, including limited capacity to develop investor-ready projects. We've seen a weak appetite to assume early stage project risks, lack of access to resource assessments, smaller deal sizes, creating barriers to scalability, and structural issues which relate to policy and regulatory frameworks. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, just to give you a snapshot of the renewable energy investment gaps and challenges, as I mentioned, particularly in developing countries, many types of barriers exist. There are high initial investment costs, lack of the capacity amongst the project developers to prepare and develop investor-ready projects, which in essence, which as a result, lead to inadequate financing. So what this means then is that we require strengthened risk mitigation and management measures, as well as tailored insurance products and implementation agreement templates. But in conclusion, what we really need is a more tailored approach to renewable energy financing. And this means that challenging such level of investments to energy transitions requires a steady pipeline of investor-ready and scalable projects. Next slide, please. So the project facilitation and support division at Irena, the main objective of our division really is to help accelerate what would otherwise be a very lengthy project development process. And so the project facilitation and support division at Irena currently hosts two flagship initiatives. The first is the Climate Investment Platform, and the second is the Energy Transition Accelerator Platform. And again, the main objective is to facilitate actions on the ground, build a strong pipeline of bankable projects, facilitate matchmaking between project developer and project financier, and building strong partnerships around the energy transition actualization. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, oh, sorry, if you could go back. Yes, perfect. So I just wanted to kind of walk through. You can see here sort of all of the issues and all of the steps that's required in project development. Regulatory changes in technology and cost. Different investors have different lending conditions, but again, the role is to reduce the transaction cost and the transaction time. Thank you. Next slide, please. Perfect. So the main roles of the project facilitation division is to facilitate bankable renewable energy projects in developing countries, preparing regional investment forums where we'll bring together project developers and project financiers, promoting and facilitating public-private partnerships, and supporting Irena's global investment and financing plan in the post-COVID-19 recovery agenda. Next slide, please. So these are essentially the key features of the Climate Investment Platform. And I'll use the acronym CIP for short, but the CIP is essentially a joint initiative between IRENA, the United Nations Development Program, and Sustainable Energy for All in coordination with the Green Climate Fund. And the CIP covers 4 key building blocks in the climate finance value chain, which is track 1, it's climate targets, track 2, improving and supporting policies and regulations, track 3, improving marketplace conditions, and track 4, financial de-risking. So IRENA is leading the CIP risk mitigation and matchmaking activities through the IRENA for CIP, with the mandate being to mobilize capital towards developing countries to accelerate the scale of renewable energy technologies, and to facilitate, again, as I mentioned, matchmaking between renewable energy projects and renewable energy project financiers. Currently, we have 320 registered partners, of which 68 include registered financial institutions. To date, 285 projects have been submitted through the portal and are currently being considered for, have been submitted for consideration, and 120 projects out of those 285 have been selected as being eligible to receive technical assistance and project facilitation support. As you can see, our largest region where we work in is West Africa, not by choice, but it just happens that a lot of the applications and the projects that we receive actually come from that region. Next slide, please. Thank you. So who can access the CIP? So there are sort of 2 tracks. One is for the CIP projects, which are the projects that actually need support. And so the projects requesting support from IRENA's project facilitation division can either come from the public sector or private sector. It can be a PPP. And the project will receive technical assistance to support them in preparing what we call a project information document. The project project information document is a document that's actually requested by project financiers, and it essentially sets out the key features of the project, but presents it in an investment attractive way. So to be eligible for Irenas CIP support, the project must satisfy 4 key criteria. It needs to contribute to the clean energy transition. It needs to be aligned with relevant sustainable development goals. It needs to be consistent and aligned with its national climate action priorities. And it has to be beyond the conceptual stage and completed pre-feasibility, or at least completed some preliminary studies. Then if you're a CIP partner, which in this instance, you would be either a financial institution, a bank, a development bank, or a donor agency. And through this track, IRENA invites multilateral, bilateral, and local finance institutions, other development organizations who are prepared to provide either financial resources, finance, funding, technical assistance, or support the realization of the CIP projects in some way. And so the goal or the objective of the CIP is to match the project developer with the needs, to match the needs of the projects with the CIP partner who is best positioned to address those needs. Next slide, please. So these are just to give you a snapshot of some of the projects that we've supported. Till date, 33 projects have been supported by IRENA. And this is actually equivalent to approximately 470 megawatts in capacity, which could lead to mobilizing $1.1 billion. Most importantly, our mandate is to mobilize capital towards renewable energy technologies to meet NDC targets and SDG compliance. We also focus on projects that contribute to the clean energy transition. Currently, we've introduced 12 projects to financial partners registered on the CIP, and eight of those projects have been flagged by financial partners as being projects that 8 projects have garnered interest from financial partners. And so the banks and the development banks are currently in discussions with those projects now. And the goal is that they'll receive the funding that they need. So currently, as I mentioned, the largest number of our projects are located in West Africa. But this year, we hope to expand the focus of our support to projects located in other regions, such as small islands, Southeast Asia, Southeast Europe, and Latin America. Next slide, please. So again, this is just to give show a geographical spread of the 218 projects around the world that have been registered through the CIP and have been taken forward either through technical assistance, either through matchmaking or helping the projects to prepare their project information documents. IRENA's technical assistance covers multiple aspects: technology, financial viability, sustainability, environmental and social impact, as well as helping the project to be aligned with its national interest, especially with regards to its NDCs. Next slide, please. So this is just to give you a roadmap of our project facilitation and support lifecycle. I mentioned that the CIP is a demand-driven platform, and what that means is that we only support projects that request for our assistance, projects that are registered on the platform. And once the project registers, what happens is it goes through a pre-screening process, and then there's a panel review that will decide whether or not the project is eligible to receive support. At that stage, we then support the project in developing a project information document, which is then reviewed by another panel. And then once the project information document has been completed, we then submit that document to a number of financial institutions to see whether or not there's interest from any of the financial partners who would like to finance the project. Next slide, please. So the second initiative is the Energy Transition Accelerator Financing Platform. And this is an inclusive multi-stakeholder climate finance platform to advance the global energy transition. It was actually launched last year during COP in 2021. And the aim is to mobilize approximately $1 billion to support the energy transition by 2030. In fact, the UAE, through the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, is actually the anchor investor of the ETAF with an initial 400 million in investment. So ETAF is leveraging, Irena's global geographic footprint, its institutional convening power, as well as Irena's unparalleled knowledge on renewable energy technologies. But also equally, ADFD's 50 years of experience in concessional and development financing resources worldwide, and their commitment to climate finance. We've already built a track record with ADFD under the previous Irena ADFD facility that was implemented during 2013 to 2020. Next slide, please. So this is our value proposition to both project developers as well as to funding partners. ETAF will offer developers access to funding provided by its funding partners, as well as access to other co-funding sources. ETAF will also provide technical assistance using Irena's resources and experts. And then once the projects, there will be a platform where projects can register and submit an application for funding matchmaking. The ETAF team will accept applications on a rolling basis, so there isn't a deadline. But then we also have a value proposition for our funding partners, in the sense that ETAF will provide access to a diverse range of small, medium, and large-scale projects from both local and regional developers who know how to navigate the complexities of their countries and regions. So the ETAF platform will essentially support the development of a pipeline of bankable, scalable projects. But then we also, the platform will also offer to funding partners the ability to co-finance, and take advantage of co-investment opportunities. Because it would be leveraging the investments of multiple financiers and funding partners. But also through ETAF's matchmaking process, it will be subject to the funding partners' credit and risk guidelines, as well as compliance with their procedures and internal policies. Next slide, please. Well, that being said, thank you. Thank you very much again for giving me the opportunity to present some of the initiatives that Irena has launched to support the green energy transition, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, for this thorough, detailed presentation, for taking us through your building, being one of the most sustainable 10 buildings in the UAE, and also for highlighting the CIP ETAF. And as you mentioned, the UAE being an investor in ETAF does demonstrate how much the country is laying emphasis in terms of renewable energy and in this particular field. So thank you very much for this presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're now moving on to our next speaker, Samuel Joroj. He is Cluster Quality Assurance Manager at JA Resorts and Hotels. I'll stop sharing my screen here so that you can start sharing yours. Samuel.
Thank you very much, Fatma and Dubai Chambers, for having me here. Really appreciate the fact that you've given us an opportunity to showcase the hospitality sector and represent tourism, which is one of the biggest sector when it comes to travel. I'll just quickly share my slides. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, I'm unable to share my slide, Fatma, as well.
No worries. I am sharing it now.
Fantastic. Thank you. So the theme for JA Resorts and Hotels is, I'll take you through JA the Resort, which is Dubai's most sustainable 5-star resort, aligned around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the UAE's circular economy for 2021 and 2031, and UAE's net zero strategic initiative by 2050. So basically, JA the Resort has aligned ourselves around these 3 themes, which we want to support the UAE government and the government of Dubai towards achieving. I'm very proud to also share with you that in 2019, Jaya the Resort was awarded by Dubai Economy and Tourism Department as Dubai's most sustainable 5-star resort. We went through a 19-point criteria assessment where they assessed us in regards to energy, water, and other requirements around sustainability. So it was very nice to see the government of Dubai implementing a framework around the hospitality sector as to how we can follow the sustainability requirements around tourism sector. Just to give you a quick history of Jaya the Resort in Jebel Ali Beach, this is Dubai's largest experience resort. It's based in a 128-acre property with 3 unique hotels in one resort. So we have Jaya Beach Hotel, which is our flagship property that opened in 1981. Jaya Palm Tree Court, which is also open in 1998, and our latest property, which opened in 2019, Jaya Lakeview Hotel. We have a total of 795 room keys spread across with over 40 experiences and 25 dining outlets and restaurants with an 800-meter stretch beach of private beach and over 1 million square meters of unique memorable experiences. The next slide, please, Fatma. So this is just to show you a quick overview of Jaya Beach Hotel. It's a hotel which has 235 room keys. This is our flagship property, which was opened in 1981, and it's one of the Middle East's first, leisure resort to have been opened. Can move on to the next slide. Jaya Palm Tree Court was opened in 1998. This is a 212 room key property, which has over 10 villas, and it's really spread across the resort under one umbrella. Can we go to the next slide, please? Jaya Lakeview Hotel is the latest property that we opened in 2019. Its design was designed behind the sustainability focus. So we do have quite a lot of initiatives that we've put in place in this particular building, which is a very smart green building that has come into addition into Jaya the Resort's unique 3 properties. Can move to the next slide, please. So our company's vision and mission statement for the resort is to be recognized for our unique, as UAE's leading resort destination, offering unique and memorable experience. And our mission, we are committed to delivering exceptional services and experiences that engage all generations. Across Jaya Resorts and Hotels, we have 7 UAE properties and 2 Indian Ocean properties. We are a locally homegrown company, and we have put in place an energy policy, which actually, if you can go to the next slide, Fatima. We have put in place an energy policy statement, which actually tackles the use of energy across the entire group, where we want to associate ourselves with the greenhouse gas emission through the implementation of a sustainable energy management program, SCMP, at all hotels under our management. This program will be aligned to the ISO 5001-2011, which is the international standards for energy management system, which will be implemented in 7 of our UAE properties and the 2 Indian Ocean properties that we have. I'll take you through that shortly. So Jaya the Resort is working hard to reducing our carbon emission, energy and water, which will be crucial to facilitating our green transition. This will include striving circularity and efficiency to achieve more with the smallest resource footprint that we have. If you can move to the next slide, please. This is just to show you an overview of our unique properties. We have the 2 properties in Indian Ocean, one at the Maldives called Jaya Manafaru on the complete right. And then we have Enchanted Island Resort, which is right at the middle there. And that's based in Seychelles. And then we have the 7 UAE properties, 2 of them based across the Jumeirah Beach residence. And we have 1 property in Hatterford, which is Jaya Hatterford Hotel, and the Manor by JA, which is a brand that we've just recently brought into our portfolio. If we can move to the next slide. Basically, I'll take you through our plan for energy management plan, automation, and transportation. We will be focusing as a resort around our plan, which follows mean, lean, and green hierarchy. And then we also want to ensure that we increase or we improve efficiency without reducing guest comfort. And while looking at the mean, we are looking at how we can address issues around lighting, monitoring, building performance, and transportation, which is green transportation across the resort. We are looking also at lean, how we can reduce the use of light and equipment, and also renewable sources. In order to achieve this, we have set a couple of targets in place, which is to achieve a 10% reduction by 2023 in regards to the use of energy, as compared to what we had initially compared to in statistics from 2022. We regularly monitor energy use across the units and the departments through utility dashboards and monthly unit level energy management reports. We determine the energy management effectiveness and develop customized action plans for each unit in order to achieve sustainability holistically. We also have to report monthly on the use of energy in the executive communications meeting, where we have all our senior leadership and owners, and compare the baseline targets with the KPIs that we have set in place. We also want to make sure that we establish energy management steering committee across the group and ensure that all our procurement policies promote energy efficiency through Emirates standardization mark. So we usually also ask our suppliers to share with us their green documents. If you can move to the next slide, please, Fatima. Thank you. We also want to ensure that while we are going through energy management plan, we have to ensure that we are trying as much as possible to reduce guest comfort. So to make sure that our guests are also comfortable while we try to put these initiatives in place. We have increased training across our staff and across all the workshops that we have and targets that we do around training sessions. All our team members understand how we can monitor energy and how we need to reduce energy. We review all the operational standards with energy efficiency in mind, and we adopt the best energy management practices in place. We always communicate the progress with the sustainable energy management program to the public and to the guests as well. That can be seen through our digital display screens across all our lobbies. And we also have an IPTV information around sustainability, energy reduction targets, and water targets in all our guest rooms. So we also want to ensure that each unit has an energy management champion who understands how to drive this change, because it's important to have key drivers and associates involved. And in order to reduce objectives and targets, we have to make sure that we reduce total energy consumption by 10% by 2023, which I mentioned earlier, and we ensure that we fully comply to all government regulations. In order to achieve this, we also make sure that we are aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the UAE Circular Economy Policy, and our support towards the UAE Net Zero by 2050 strategic initiative. The next slide, please. This is basically, we'll focus only on mean, lean, green, and emission. In J Lakeview Hotel, which is the newest property which I showcased earlier, we have, for example, implemented motion sensor lights and room keycards that are able to set default temperature in the rooms by 24 degrees. AC switches off automatically through the BMS system. We have all external lights, which are photocells, and equipment that operate the RO plants are dependent on it. When we move to the lean, we look at all the incandescent lights replaced with LED across the hotel. We have replaced equipment to the Emirates standardization labels across how we purchase equipment at the resort. We have also looked at conversion of all electric calorifiers to energy efficient hot water pumps. And we also promote the mode of green transportation as a clean energy mode. At the resort, we also have over 125 caddies that are spread across the resort. This is to also ensure that we promote green transport so that people cannot use cars moving around the resort, because it's a very big piece of land. We have also seen that we have reduced over 1,000 tons of AC in regards to the emission, and we've also installed electric charging stations that support green transportation, and the conversion of all electric calorifiers to energy efficient hot water pumps. When I mentioned that we have also reduced the 1,000 tons of AC, this is in regards to the amount of the AC units that we had spread across the resort during the past. where we had Palm Tree Court and JA Beach Hotel functioning on 2 separate units. We moved on and invested in a centralized cooling plant, which will come up within the next slide. So if we can move to the next slide, please. At JA Lakeview Hotel, just to give you a quick overview, on the left, you can see that the building is a smart building which has solar panels installed on the rooftop. This is to support with the hot water supply for all the guest rooms. The BMS system, also the building management system, focuses also on light. We also have that at the building, which also can do settings around the heating, ventilation, and AC settings. All the condensate water that is used across the JA Lakeview Hotel also goes back to, and the chilled water goes back to the greenery of the resort. So no water is wasted from this particular building, which also shows that we have aligned ourselves to 4 of the goals, which is affordable and clean energy, industry innovation, and sustainable cities, and our attempt towards the climate action. You can move to the next slide. We have also invested in a reverse osmosis plant at the resort. This was done at the initial stage of when we were opening the resort. So they decided to commission the first plant in 1998, where we added, we have 4 reverse osmosis plants, which actually we use the water from the sea, and then we are not buying any water from DEWA. So we usually directly do the reverse osmosis, remove all the sand residue, and it goes through the whole desalinization process. And that same water goes across the entire resort into our guest rooms, into all public washrooms, and then we close the loop by sending the water back to the sewage treatment plant. So by commissioning the 4 RO plants, we can see that we've actually managed to also do a little bit of energy recovery units around that. And we actually produce about 130,000 imperial gallons of water through the RO plants at the resort. Can move to the next slide. This will focus around water management plan, which we have done across the entire resort. And we focus around towels and linen, and also other initiatives around how we close the loop in terms of how do we recycle the water at the resort. So we've set aside elimination and reduction targets and reuse and recycling initiatives in place, whereby we have installed a little bit of fixtures around the resort, around our landscape and irrigation, in particular laundry, which is our biggest use or consumption of water. We have one of the biggest laundries in the region, where we use a lot of water. So we've invested also in an effluent treatment plant, which I will show you on the next slide. And we do reuse all the recycling water across the resort. 98.6% of the water goes back into the greenery of the resort. The 2 supporting units here is the sewage treatment plant and the effluent treatment plant, which basically effluent treatment plant treats all the laundry water, and the sewage treatment plant treats all the water that comes from all our public washrooms and all our guest washrooms as well. We have set aside also a target of water reduction by 1% a year, which is not an easy thing to do, but we do, with these initiatives in place, we do believe that we are able to achieve the 1% target. We are engaged with a company to also explore possible leaks across the Gulf area, just to ensure that we don't have any leaking pipes. We have also been trialing a project where we want to put in place a project where we can have gray water recycled from the hand basin and the shower flush rooms, so that we can recycle water twice. We are looking also at probably putting hydro panels for drinking water at the sports center, whereby we get water from the atmosphere. And then by this technology, we hope that we can be able to reduce the use of water coming from DEWA or from the RO plant. We have also tested breathable sand technology, which is basically a sand that usually utilizes or keeps the water retention for a longer period of time, working with a company called Dakeration. And we have seen a little bit of change when it comes to the planting of gaff trees, for example, with how much water consumption that they would have. If we can move on to the next slide, please. This is to show you our central cooling plant, which is based at the resort. Basically, when we implemented this central cooling plant, the whole thought process was around the company investing in one centralized plant, whereby as opposed to having split units for different hotels, by investing in this, we have seen that we have managed to actually save about 3,300 AC units of discharge. And the plant basically caters for the entire resort and all the business units spread across the resort. You can move to the next slide. Thank you. So in the past state, as we mentioned, we used to use the chill water, which was chilled water for Beach Hotel, which was about 1,360 tons. And at J Palm Tree Court, we used to use about 1,310 tons. But with an additional hotel, when we invested in, when we brought J Lakeview Hotel into the portfolio, this would have meant that we would have added 1,600 tons of chilled water. And so a conscious decision was taken to invest in a centralized cooling plant where we can actually have all the three properties functioning with a total of 3,300 tons of cooling capacity. And this also shows how we have aligned ourselves to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is on the right, the climate action, industry innovation, affordable clean energy, and sustainable cities and communities. We can move to the next slide. The sewage treatment plant basically looks like you can see on the picture on the left side. This was commissioned in 1981, as I earlier mentioned, and all the resort landscape and gardens are irrigated through the gray water that comes from this sewage treatment plant. Supporting the sewage treatment plant is also an effluent treatment plant, which is on the next slide, please. So all our laundry water, the 130,000 or 175,000 liters of water capacity that we can use in a day actually goes back to the treatment of operation here on the left side, where you can see the effluent treatment plant. So it can treat up until 175,000 liters of water a day. And we usually remove all the harmful chemicals that may have ended up in the greenery. So once the whole process of the water and the chemicals is cleaned up from the effluent treatment plant, this is sent over to the sewage treatment plant as gray water. And then again, we close the loop by using that water for the greenery of the resort. And that's how we have basically aligned ourselves around the SDGs. And that's how we are supporting the UAE government towards its initiative for Strategic 2050. And that's how we are also ensuring that we are achieving a circular economy as a resort. And we being the Dubai most sustainable resort, we still continue to explore green areas where we can also increase renewable energy at the resort, such as we are looking at also putting solar panels across our car park areas. So next slide, thank you. So in a nutshell, that's what the resort is all about. Thank you so much for Fatima for giving us this opportunity to showcase J Resorts and Hotels and the resort with all the initiatives that we have in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samuel, for this insightful presentation and for taking us through all the different measures and initiatives that you have implemented at JA Resorts. It is definitely one of the leading examples in the UAE when it comes to the hospitality sector. So thank you very much for sharing your presentation, your example with us. So moving on to our last but not least speaker for today, we have Saud Dosari, Manager Operations, Operation and Maintenance at Empower. Would you like to share your slides, Saud, or would you like me to share that for you?
I'll try sharing it, but first, Fatima, can you try adding me as a co-host because the camera is not showing again?
I'll make you as a host. Can you try now opening your camera?
Nope, still.
You are already a host.
It's fine, I can proceed with if it doesn't work, I'll proceed with the presentation.
All right, we're sorry for this, actually.
Host disabled, also I cannot share.
All right, fine, I'll share it for you, no worries.
Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. I'd like to thank first Fatima and Dubai Chamber for giving us the opportunity to participate in sharing the practices that are being done in Empower. I understood that the attendees are of a variety spectrum. Some are technical and some are not. So I'll start with saying Empower is an energy district cooling company. We serve both commercial and industrial buildings. And Empower stands now in terms of capacity of 1,640,000 ton of refrigeration, and we serve around 1,420 towers all across Dubai. The presentation I have prepared is the intention of it is we understand that I believe that every sector can contribute towards green building and energy saving in one way or another. So these slides will give just an examples of what Empower are doing throughout year in, year out practices. Fatma, can you move in to the next slide, please? Click more, yes. Throughout my years in Empower, the company has grown so big, and when a company grows so big and quite fast, whether Empower or another company, we tend to divert from the intentions and the goals that the company has set for. So we have a measures for such in terms of energy saving, KPI set points or saving. And through that, we have done few examples such as one, addition of adiabatic smart cooling. Two is a change of relocation of temperature transmitters. Three, relocation of blowdown line. And four, maximizing the treated storage water utilization. So moving on to the first point, smart cooling is an evaporative cooling system where a system is being added on top of a chiller, and it basically drops the outside atmospheric temperature before it hits the coil. So in this, there are many evaporative cooling systems, but in this particular case, the water, there are sprays that drops that it makes the droplets are too small, such that the evaporation rate is high, and there is a membrane system in place so that the water does not hit the condenser coil and cause any sort of rust or that thing. The system reduces the outside air temperature for air-cooled chiller system. This is for air-cooled chiller system from anywhere between 10 to 20 degrees Celsius. And we have noticed that it has electrical saving maximum up to 20% energy of saving. To demonstrate or give an example of what this looks like, if you could move towards the picture, Fatima, and come to the bottom, you'll see a play. So it's something like this spray that is being nozzled, and there are membranes that prevent water from taking place, and heat transfers are being maximized, causing saving in electricity and increase in production. So if you could go to the other slide, I'll just show some readings that we have noted down. So we've made a record throughout a year with the system running without the adiabatic smart cooling system, and we also done the same with smart cooling system. And you can see from the table, the difference in saving per month. Yeah. The system is intended for maximized use during summer. However, we have noticed that there are some savings in a lower percentage in off-season time as well. And if I would roughly close approximate to the figures and saving, initially we've done it with 2 units, and then we've started getting more units. So with just 2 units, we've got throughout the year around 631,662. We've taken additionally another 15 units. So in total, altogether, they would bring about a saving in terms of dirham is 5,369 unit, but that would have an equivalent in energy saving as well, which will have less consumption or demand load from the grid itself. Can you move on to the next slide, please? The second practice, what we have done, our team here in Empower, we have a command control center where they analyze data in terms of chiller operation, pumps operation, cooling tower operation, and compare them against design, and they set graphs for each and try to optimize the use of those equipment to the possible potential. Throughout this exercise, it has been identified that the sensor from which the energy is being reported for kilowatt per ton and used for the production is been placed not on a suitable location to determine the actual production that is being produced. So we started this with 2 units, and then we've compared these units, and we've seen a difference in the kilowatt per TR. We've completed the same for the other units, and here from the graph, you can see the previous read, which is in dark bold. Where is it? Before the TTR location, that it has changed from higher kilowatt per ton to a lower kilowatt per ton saving. Now again, this gives us also an indication where we are actually standing at and how to move forward to further improving this and to give a better representation of the saving that is being done. Next slide, Fatima. The third change, which is currently in progress, Empower, before going into this, Empower is a combination of multiple plants. We have our own built plants and we have acquired plants. So when we acquire a plant, the normal practice is to see the weaknesses of these plants and the benefits of these plants and where we can improve and bring them in line with Empower standards. So among the plants that we acquired and we have noticed that the blow down water tapping connection is being taken from the cold side. Cold side in a sense, if I would look into the pictures on the right side, A being the condenser, the blowdown is being taken from the cold side. So after the water that gets cooled, blowdown is being taken from the outlet of the cooling tower. B is the hot side, where the blowdown is taken from the inlet of the cooling tower. So some locations around the 13 sites they have been identified that they are of type B. what is happening here, if we are in type 1, the chiller cools the outlet of the, and the cooling tower cools the return water to the cooling tower. And this energy, which has been cooled, portion of it is being drained out as a blowdown, and we lose energy from it. So this has been identified, and we are in progress of shifting it to figure B, where the return water, the blowdown will be taken from the return water of the cooling tower. Anyways, that's an energy that is being returned back to the cooling before it gets cooled down. So with the table below shows an example of the unutilized tonnage if we are from the plants that are currently in figure A. So it goes as minimum as 4,600 TR up to 272,000 TR. So the equivalent, the total of these plants energy unutilized tonnage is around 1,127,000 TR, and the equivalent amount of such is per year is 640,000. In terms of saving for kilowatt, it would be 1,000 kilowatt saving, and in terms of water, it would have been around 1,691. If we move to the last slide, for the treated sewerage effluent utilization, in Empower, we strive to save continuously in every way possible. And in this particular case, it is decided to maximize fresh water saving by increasing the TSE water usage. So Empower are building plants with TSE, as well as carrying out retrofitting in existing plant to incorporate the usage of TSE water. And with that, we can see that from 2019, how Empower grew by using, in terms of plant RO plant capacity, it has increased from 2019. We were around 5,200, and we have become around 23,600, and the intention is to reach the forecasted that we have till now for 2024 is to reach up to 41,640. So it does what I'm trying to say here throughout the presentation. There is a potential of saving in terms of electricity and water in a multiple different way, and we should not be fixated on the type or the business we do. Within the business, there are processes and systems that we can look at, such as one of the co-hosts has given the GA examples. They have touched on multiple areas to carry out the saving. With that, can you go to the next slide? Here is just a continuation of the previous slide in terms of fresh water saving. In 2019, we were around 294 million. And then in 2024, we are forecasting to be on a higher figure than what we are. Every year, we tend to aim for a higher water saving. Can we go to the next slide? Here also another representation in terms of percentage, showing the adaptation of TSE in terms of DEWA water consumption, at least by 50%. So The percentage uses on contribution from DIWA, initially we were using a lower percentage from the, a higher percentage. So out of the 25%, the remaining would have been DIWA. So now we have reached 2022 and we only utilize 28% of DIWA water. The rest is just from TES. And the intention is to reach 2024 with lower usage from DIWA water. Okay, next. The slide has completed, and we've just a merely a conclusion slide that touched upon the point that I have discussed: the adiabatic smart cooling, the location of temperature transmitter, the location of blow down, and the maximizing of heat transfer. I've just added a word of my own: do not go with the flow, but be one that creates the flow that leads to the positive change, which is my intention through this presentation. Thank you, Fatma, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you very much, Saud, for taking us through this presentation. Definitely, it brings a different perspective to the table since you're speaking about your plans. So thank you for this insightful presentation. We will just go through the Q&A sessions right now. So we have one question for Saud. Saying that, are you able to manage any potential corrosion issues from the adiabatic system?
Yes, actually, this particular adiabatic system, it has a treatment connection and a tank with it. So there are some addition of treatment in that system while the water is being pumped with the size of the particle that are being distributed and the membrane, it overcomes that situation.
All right, thank you. If you have any questions, for the attendees, please drop them in the Q&A box so we can address them to our speakers. One question also maybe for Saud and Samuel, what were the challenges, like the major challenges that you faced during those, while implementing those initiatives, and how did you overcome them? Maybe we can hear from Saud first.
Challenges is, I would say the first challenge is to prove first to the management that actual investments would bring a worth of investment change. And once that take place, in Empower, I would say, we try to save in every way possible. So we tend initially to start doing things in-house in terms of relocations and changes. To the system being that it has a demand and availability to serve continuously 24 by hour, that would be a challenge as to when to execute work. Other than that, I don't see more challenges than this. That's all.
Perfect. Thank you. And Samuel, would you like to add something?
Yes, thank you very much. That was a very good question asked. I mean, for us at the resort, we did face quite a few challenges, with the addition of this very heavy investments, such as, for example, the centralized cooling plant. This was an investment of over 3 million dirhams, and for us, the challenge was convincing the owner to invest in a central cooling plant. So basically, this needed to be, in a centralized location, where we would have to have looked at how we are going to supply the chill water pipes to the newest hotel, Lakeview, which is quite a distance from the other two properties. This made us actually look at, how the design of the golf course was. So we had to redesign the golf course. We also had to, do some digging and have the pipes going underneath the golf course up until the corner where the Lakeview Hotel is. So that was a challenge for us, going through the whole redesigning of golf course, going through convincing our owners on investing into an additional, unbudgeted capex. Also, the effluent treatment plant, for example, cleaning and removing all the harmful chemicals for the laundry water was also a plant that costed nearly about 1 million dirhams, which also was another way that we had to also convince our owners to invest in this, so we can be able to actually, recycle the water on site. Because for us, it's not only about return on investment, but it's about social return on investment, doing the right thing. And we do have very, very humble and helpful owners who they look at the bigger vision. And so for them, being convinced that we're doing the right thing and we're supporting the government, we're supporting the environment. And these are some of the costs that you have to incur if you want to really tackle climate change. So these are just two examples to show you. And also obviously Lakeview Hotel being the newest property of management systems, and those thought processes had to come in also from the point of design with the architects, and the investments had to be considered and factored in just before the building of the hotel. So those are just some of the challenges we faced, but at the end of the day, I think we to support climate change and to support these initiatives, it would need a little bit of investment coming from the owners. And that's usually the biggest challenge.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you very much. And since you touched upon the laundry, there's a question from one of our attendees asking whether there's any impact on the maintenance cost in the RO plant when you're using laundry water treatment?
There is no such impact on the RO plant because what happens is that it depends on the amount of contracts that we get from outside. For instance, we do have contracts to about 15 hotels that we manage. And obviously there are costs that come in, unexpected costs when it comes to, unforeseen, equipment that maybe stops working. But we rarely receive that. The only thing we do have challenge with are the machines at the laundry area. Sometimes, they do, because of the heavy amount of work that they have to go through every day, we do have challenges with also maintaining that. So yes, to answer your question, there is challenges around maintenance, and there is a cost behind maintaining the effluent treatment plant, but not necessarily having an impact on the RO plant, because the RO plant, it only delivers the water to the laundry. So the challenge is only around effluent treatment plant, delivering the water from the ETP plant into the STP plant, the sewage treatment plant. So I hope I've answered your question correctly.
Thank you very much, Samuel. Yes, you have. One final question for Jennifer. So where do you see us going in terms of renewable energy? I mean, being at Irenas, so where do you see the world heading towards, or particularly the region heading towards, in terms of renewable energy in the future?
Thank you. Great. So I have to first of all preface this by saying this is my personal opinion. So I do think if I'm being honest, I do think that the UAE is a bit advanced. When I look at sort of the work that we're doing in developing countries and where the UAE is, the UAE obviously, has more financial leverage and resources to actually to shepherd the energy transition a lot faster than, let's say, other poorer countries, which I think is actually, I think I actually find that very encouraging, because I know one thing that I have to note about the UAE is that, despite being, heavily endowed with fossil fuel resources and oil, it can, however, take the lead in sort of guiding other countries, other oil producing countries, and how to navigate that transition, even though they are, oil and gas leaders. So, because I know that's one issue I think that a lot of other oil and gas countries are facing is, they don't necessarily want to abandon all of their natural resources. So how to do that in how to, navigate that transition in a sustainable way. I see the UAE as definitely charting the path and leading, those countries in that effort. Then with regards to the rest of the world, I mean, I remain optimistic, you know, despite a lot of the developmental challenges. I think, as you know, one of the big topics that has been trending is just energy transition and climate justice, which essentially means that the West and other richer countries are obviously in a better position to navigate this energy transition because they've already spent, because they've already had the time historically to use coal and oil and gas to really develop themselves. But I see this as an opportunity for other parts of the world, especially for poor countries and developing countries. I see this as an opportunity to try and leapfrog that, right? So even though other countries may necessarily have coal resources and oil and gas, but they can, leverage the lessons learned and maybe actually use this as an opportunity to actually, develop and grow their economies with renewable energy. So I'm very, very optimistic, very.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Thank you very much. Yes, I do agree with you and the points that you mentioned. So thank you for highlighting those points. We will just take one final question from the audience due to time constraints, and that is for Samuel. One of our attendees is asking you about your overall experience with the solar system maintenance.
Well, I must say the solar system maintenance for us has not been a challenge so far. Since this is still a very new building, which is only 2 years in operation. The only challenge we faced was when we had to close down Lakeview Hotel due to the unforeseen, unprecedented times when we had the COVID. We closed the building for a year. So maintenance was a little bit of a cost factor for us. But in terms of operating the solar panels, we've had no issues so far.
Thank you very much, Samuel. And with that, we would like to thank all our attendees for joining us today in this webinar. We hope you learned from our discussions today, and we would like to thank all our speakers. It was a pleasure having them with us and listening to them and learning from them quite so much on green buildings and energy and water efficiency. Thank you very much once again, and I wish you a very good day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatma.
Thank you. You're most welcome.
Thank you, Fatima. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
This question is not asked.